everybody, it's Ronnie, and we're here with Daybreak Star Radio. I'm joined by DJ Summer Joy, and we are about to bring you another interview with a very, very amazing person, Sandra K, who's a distinguished mechanical engineer of Navajo Nation heritage, who has significantly contributed to the field through her work at Sandia National Laboratories. She focuses on developing renewable solutions, particularly for remote Native American communities. Sandra's efforts are recognized by her receipt of the Indigenous Excellence Award from the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. And her work exemplifies a blend of engineering experience with a commitment to sustainability and community empowerment. And I want to thank you so much for joining us, Sandra. Sandra Begay, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me join today. It's a real honor. And as you can tell, I enjoy my career. I have a lot of fun. Maybe that's the secret to doing a lot of work in Indian countries. You got to have some fun.
There's a lot of truth to that. There's definitely a lot of truth to that. So first question, what inspired you to pursue a career in engineering, and how has, your Navajo heritage influenced your path?
Sure. I think that's a really great question, is that many people, when they think about their careers, it's always good to look back as to what was that spark that helped you figure out what you wanted to do. And I can actually go back to fourth grade. I was in boarding school. I had to stay in the boarding school during the week, and my mom was attending college at the time, and my dad was a tribal councilman, so he couldn't take care of two little girls. So it was my time to be at a boarding school. And, although you hear different experiences about boarding school, it helped me appreciate, what we need from our families, and to be able to live at your home and go to school versus living in a dorm. But, that didn't really stop me from thinking and being creative. So at that time, I had long black hair, and I'd have to wash my hair because they made us take a shower every day. So in fourth grade, they'd have us line up, and it was cold in the winter, and we'd have to march literally from our dorm to the dining hall. And I was very unhappy. I didn't like that because my hair was wet, and I didn't have a cap. And I was just thinking to myself, there's got to be something different that could happen here, because I don't like being miserable and cold. And so I thought about it. I had gotten a trip to probably Disneyland because my grandma lived in California. And I thought, why don't we just put in a monorail? Just off the top of my head, let's solve this problem where all of us get in a monorail and just go to the dining hall, nice and warm, get back and forth. And so it sort of sparked my creativity to think of crazy ideas like that, right from the get-go. And I've learned that I'm trying not to dwell on problems or challenges, but also think. And what engineers do is a lot of thinking. How do you solve this problem? There's a lot of challenges in this world, but how do you solve it? How do you fix things? How do you do better? And that was my first spark of interest. And then definitely in sixth grade, I was learning about different careers, and I thought about being an architect. And to be very honest with you, I'm a native Navajo woman that is not artistic in any way. And that's kind of an interesting stereotype. People think, oh, well, natives are creative and artistic. It's like, no, I can't draw anything, but I could draw a very straight line. So that was to my credit in mechanical drawing, which I took, is that I could do renderings of buildings. And at that time, we did it by pencil and paper. But my teacher recognized that and said, architects have to take a lot of art classes and do renderings and pictures of buildings to see what they look like when it's all done. But they work with engineers who don't have to do the artistic part, but they got to make sure the building doesn't fall down. And that was it. That's what he had told me about it. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be an engineer. And if I can, maybe someday work with architects.
Nice. So don't do the art, just do the part of the art that keeps it together.
The money making.
Yeah. Rely on somebody else to do it, make it pretty, and I'll make sure it stays up.
There we go.
Okay, so you did describe two projects, but I'm wondering if you can describe a particular project at Sandia National Laboratories that you found particularly impactful or meaningful.
So I think it was my first assignment as a researcher or staff member at Sandia Labs. I was busy doing project management. So I'm a civil and structural engineer by training, but I happened to get a job in the mechanical engineering part of the research and development side. So I knew how to do projects, just like we talked about, make sure buildings stand up, and we know how to do construction and that kind of thing. But in the technical side of research, a project landed in my lap, and I guess I'm very grateful. Senator Jeff Bingaman of New Mexico at one point said, the Navajo Nation should really take care of its rural electrification. Let's get solar panels to Navajos who live off the grid. And so he gave money to Navajo, and I was the third party from the federal government to help get the project done. And so I worked with the Department of Energy, and I worked with Navajo Nation, and I worked with the utility, and we put together off-grid solar units so that those could be put at grandma's homes, families' homes, where they were not anywhere lines and poles with electricity. So that was meaningful to me because my grandma out in Church Rock of New Mexico didn't have electricity for most of her life. And so seeing a technical solution that really solved a problem quickly gave me a lot of joy. It was a lot of fun to do that project.
Wow. Literally bringing power to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So as a recipient of the Indigenous Excellence Awards by the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, I've been asked to ask you, what does this recognition mean to you personally and professionally?
Oh, personally, it's like one of the highest honors that I could be bestowed. I have been a member of ACES since I was a young kid in school, all the way from the University of New Mexico, all the way through graduate school onto Sandia Labs. We have professional chapters. So to be recognized for the unique work I do with tribes was like the greatest honor I've ever had. To be able to say that I used my technical abilities, my ability to listen to communities and help them with renewable energy projects is a highlight of my career. But to be able to be recognized by that society was just so prestigious and such a humbling honor for me.
Okay, so your work in providing renewable energy solutions to remote Navajo communities is groundbreaking. Could you share more about the challenges and rewards of these initiatives?
Sure. Part of it I had to learn that not just a small group. So myself, the utility electrical engineers, and then the staff from the tribe, all working together as a team. I think what I've learned a lot about that is to try to find with technology, how do you help get power to people? So this concept is interesting. So you pull together these pieces of a solar system and you put it on skids in a steel frame, like a box. You put batteries on there. You put a frame for the solar panels and have them on an angle. You do that before you go to the home. So it's like a manufactured unit. And the concept is you want to drag that with a truck, drag and drop, and then you get the home ready with having it wired and some lines outside the home, and then you plug and play. So it's a really interesting concept, drag and drop, plug and play, where you make homes having no electricity. All of a sudden one day they're able to turn the lights on. So for me, that's groundbreaking to use technology rather than waiting for a grandma to get excess money, like $35,000 a mile, when she may live 10 miles or more from the electrical grid. That may not be something is feasible for her or ever going to make it 10 miles off the grid because it's so expensive. But she can get one of these units, plug it in, and get ready to use her appliances. And we also caution them about using refrigerators to get a very energy efficient refrigerator. So then they solve a lot of problems. You can have healthier food that will last longer. You can also refrigerate medicine if you need to. And I think that takes a little bit away from when you don't have electricity, you have to use ice chests and run to the store quite often. And for some people on Navajo, that's a long way to go to the grocery store.
So side question on how long does it take to set one of these units up for a home? Is it just something that can just basically drop off and plug and play? Like literally that's as fast as it goes? It can't be that
simple because you have the unit specially built and have it waiting for a customer. And the others on the other side, your home has to be ready for the electricity. So it has to be wired all internally and then have a connection point with a trench. You bury the cables and then you come in and just put it together and it's ready to go. And you know what's interesting about this project is I could only go so far because the senator's money went for 5 years. So I helped the utility do what they could. And yet there was still need. But I haven't said this, but I've had an internship program for 22 years now. And I've had 50 American Indian STEM students as students that work for me. And 3 of my former interns have come together. They created a nonprofit called Native Renewables, and they do this work as a nonprofit for both Navajo and Hopi. So they put their units together in Flagstaff. It's 3 women, interestingly enough. And then they get customers that can either get a loan for the project, or philanthropy. Foundations may pay for the unit for those families. So they're taking another way of doing this besides the utility to do it as a nonprofit to get those units out.
Whatever
Nice.
it takes.
Wow. Yeah. Whatever it takes. Definitely.
Well, and that goes to number 5.
Yeah. Another side question before we move on to the next question. How many homes do you think now that you've been able to set up?
Oh, that's hard. It's not as many as you'd hope. So there's a need of, they say 10,000 homes, and that might be not 10,000 people because you have many people living in a home, but that's kind of the latest number. And the utility fielded about 350 units when they had the grant from the federal government. And then Native Renewables is putting in at least 10 every 6 months, or maybe a few. So the need is still there. There's other options that people might want to do. The utility does have the off-grid model still, but they also have been trying to get families that are very close, like half a mile from the electrical grid. They have volunteer utility people come in each summer, and they'll get to those homes that are just we call it a stone's throw away, and they call it Light Up Navajo. So they're able to extend the grid for those families that are so close. And it may be a better fit for maybe a handicapped person, or maybe a patient that has to have dialysis or oxygen, because you need really steady power for those kinds of medical equipment. So that may be a better fit for them than solar.
Nice. Okay. So still a lot of work to go, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
There. That's awesome. So you were just speaking a little bit about your internships and stuff like that. I wanted to actually speak a little more on that. How do you approach mentorship and support for American Indian engineering students and young professionals?
The approach was, because I was doing this work by myself back 22 years ago, and I thought, how am I going to get more people when I don't have that much funding available? And I happened to know Debbie Tewa, who is a chapter in Winona LaDuke's book, All My Relations. So Debbie is an electrician, and she was featured in the book. And she actually put solar out at the Monkopi villages at Hopi and other locations on the Hopi reservation. And she happened to be in school. And so for me, it's easy to hire students as interns than it would be full-time staff, because I can do it quickly, and it's for a summer. So I asked Debbie, I said, since you're in school, can you come help me? You know more about electricity than I do. So I learned that early on. Surround yourself with people who know more than you do. And she kept me safe by saying, Sandra, don't touch that. You're going to electrocute yourself. So I'm a civil and structural engineer, and I'm mechanical work, but I'm not electrical. So you need a buddy who knows all about that to keep you safe. And that started the momentum. I thought, well, maybe I hire 3, maybe I hire 4. All the way maximum I had was 5 students on board. And I just did that year after year after year.
Nice.
Okay, my turn. Reflecting on your education at the University of New Mexico and Stanford University, how did experiences shape your approach to engineering and problem solving?
So at the University of New Mexico, I think I had a better way of learning, because I did maybe my sophomore and part of my junior year in engineering school by myself. And I've learned you have to ask for help and don't do everything by yourself. But I got into a work group, a study group, with a Hispanic man and a Pueblo woman. And the 3 of us were just so tight as far as friends and study buddies. We finished our undergraduates together because we found each other and said, let's just take all of our classes together. Now that's ideal, and I hope people can do that. They call it cohort. I didn't know what that word was at the time. Those were my cohorts. I was able to finish school with them. And then in graduate school, it was the opposite. At Stanford, I was on my own, isolated. I had imposter syndrome, which means you feel like they let you in, but you shouldn't really be there. And you don't want to fail because they'll say all women of color, all Navajo women, all Native women, they can't hack it, at Stanford to study what I studied. I thought, no, I can't have that. And I think the other thing about Stanford, I was there in 1989 when they had a big earthquake. right? So I'm studying structural engineering. There's a major earthquake and I'm on the floor under the tables thinking, what in the world am I doing here? And why am I learning about earthquakes? And I had to go back to my parents. When I got home, I got safe. I said, why am I here? And they said, because you chose to do this type of learning. It's very hard, but you said you wanted a challenge. And the thing they said to me, remember, the Navajo way is that we're all holistic with the world and deities and our nature and we as people and animals, we're holistic. So if the earth is going to move, you're going to have to learn to move with it. And that's what they're trying to teach you at your university, is to move with nature. Don't fight it and minimize the damage, because earthquakes will create some damage, but you can have the building reflect and move with the earthquake. And so that was interesting because I didn't know what I was studying, but they just put it in context of go back to your heritage and culture. You know that we can't control nature. Part of the deities will do what they're going to do, but you work with it and you try to learn your best to figure out what to do in that case of earthquakes.
Nice.
Wow.
I feel surround yourself with people that know more than you. That's what I'm feeling right now. So, you've had the opportunity to work on some major U.S. government laboratories. We're wondering what unique perspectives do you believe that you've been able to bring to those institutions?
Oh, I think most people at the lab had never met a person like me. So let's think about the numbers. I went to school at UNM and we have our basketball arena. At the lower part seats 13,000 people to watch basketball, right? Well, if you put all U.S. engineers in that arena, I would be the only Native woman in that whole group. Wow. And so when you meet me, it's like, I've never seen anybody like you that's doing what you're doing. And early in my career, I thought, well, I'm kind of a quirk. I'm an anomaly. I'm odd. And why am I doing this? But then I thought, this is what I wanted. This is the kind of brain that I have, and this is what I want to do. So I had to start thinking about myself differently, that I'm very unique and I have wonderful opportunities because I'm one in the 13,000 U.S. engineers to do this work. Who better to work on tribal projects than a Native woman who knows her stuff with Indian country? So I have to say, in the long run, you think about it as a blessing. You're blessed with a mind. You have gifts to talk to people. You have really good ears to listen. And I think that's what's been a joy and pleasure for me, is to be able to do this kind of work after a very long career in engineering.
What are your hopes for the advancement of renewable energy within tribal communities and beyond?
So I think each tribe is different, but many want to own what infrastructure they have. So they would like to generate their own power. Let's say the whole grid goes out in the U.S. If they had planned for a disaster and they're ready for it, they could have power when it's needed. And I'll give you an example. Blue Lake Rancheria, that's a tribe that's looked into the future and has planned. So they were planning for a disaster as being a tsunami, because they're on the California coast. They're inland enough that if a tsunami hit, and it probably will at some point in time, because that's the nature of the land underneath, right? I studied earthquakes. There's going to probably be a tsunami. But instead of reacting, they were proactive. They said, let's build our hotel, casino, service station, gas station to have its own electricity, a microgrid. So they have batteries, Tesla batteries there. They have a lot of photovoltaic PV arrays. And sure enough, a disaster hit. It wasn't a tsunami. It was the California wildfires. And that's when the PG&E of California turned off the electricity, because that was starting all these wildfires and they couldn't get it under control. But lo and behold, you see this picture of the tribe. It's at night. The tribe is all lit up. Their hotel is operating, a gas station giving gas to people, convenience stores getting food. There's a restaurant still open, and there's miles and miles of cars and those lights in the dark leading to the tribe. And so that's the vision I think some tribes have, is being prepared to be able to respond, not to just their people, but the region. And I think that's where you comes in. When you see the future, a lot of it is what the tribes are talking about. We want to be ready. We don't want to be caught in another COVID-like situation. We want to have what we need to sustain our people and to be healthy and to withstand things like this that may happen. It's what we call, again, being proactive versus reacting because it happened to you, but you're ready for it. And I'm not saying we should plan for disasters, but at some point you plan for not everything going the way you thought it would, and you're ready for it. You're able to get people activated and respond.
Hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a way to keep yourself prepared. Definitely. Well, one last question.
Sure.
As someone that has, as you said, if you sat yourself down in a room full of civil engineers, you'd be 1 in 13,000. What advice would you give to Native youth today who are just seeking to, move forward in not just civil engineering or anything like that, but just to move forward in their future?
I think I see too much hopelessness, and I will get emotional about this, because if our young people don't have hope, we're not going to survive. We have got to get our kids, our little kids, to know what's good about being alive, to know what's good about the future. Our elders depend on them to be able to sustain, right? Our families, our adults need our young people to stay positive, to stay healthy, to learn the good way of living a life. And I think that's where I keep emphasizing, I need you to have hope. I need you to understand there's things beyond what you experience that are in the world that are good. There's ways to learn. You could get a high school degree and then go on for college, and you could have a wonderful career if you don't let people hold you back. I mean, there was a point where I learned a myth that girls can't do math. And if I believed that, I would never be where I am. So that's a lie. You have to address. That's a lie. We can't believe what people say. And the more no's you hear, you find your people who tell you yes. And I give this analogy to young people. I say, we all know Winnie the Pooh and those characters. You want to find Winnie the Pooh who's positive, who bounces around, who's so happy, and you need to run away from the Eeyores of this world. Their ears are down. They have a cloud over their head. You ask them how the day is. It's raining again. If you let that in, you'll start talking like Eeyore. You're still feeling that cloud. You need to gravitate towards the positive people who are going to help you see positive things in what you could do. So that's what I mean by hope for our young people. They have got to look for that so they can see examples. And if they can't find it, have them search. Your show is highlighting people that could give a positive influence. I think that's so great to be able to reach our young people through any media that's positive and not dwell so much on the negative.
That is good, amazing. Huh? That was really good. That got me a little. Got you too. Look at you.
I'm inspired.
I want to thank you so much for speaking with us. Like I said, your engineering expertise and your commitment to sustainability and community empowerment is beyond groundbreaking, and it's truly appreciated. And Again, thank you so much for speaking with us here at Daybreak Star Radio, Sandra. It's just
power to the people.
Power to the people. Thank you.
Yes, literally. And our emotions and our spirituality has to be power to the people.